That was probably the worst camera shot of all time, but alright. So guys, it is time for football. NFL season starts today. Yes, it is September 11th, 2011. And it is time for some football. Before I start this video, today is September 11th, 2011, the 10-year anniversary of 9/11/2001, and this day has a little more impact on me than some others because I grew up in New York and I saw the first plane hit, so my best thoughts go out to everyone whose families and lives were affected during the crash of the Twin Towers. Okay, so on a more positive note, it's football. The lockout's done. NFL season starts today. Well, it starts Thursday. Green Bay beat the Saints on Thursday Night Football, but nonetheless, the first Sunday, NFL Sunday, is today. So, with that, it is time for my NFL predictions. Last year I did alright on my predictions. This year I have some bold sleepers. So, let's start off with the St. Louis Rams in the Nfc West. Yes, that's right. I think the Rams are actually going to win this division this year. The Rams had an okay season last year, going 8-8 in a rather weak division. The division's still pretty weak this year, but I see them going 10-6 this year and winning this division. So with every team, I'm going to do a sleeper on the team to break out and the most valuable player on the team. So for the Rams, I think that without a question, this year the MVP has to be Sam Bradford. This guy was the AP Rookie of the Year last year, and he's just a monster. Coming out of Oklahoma as the first overall pick, he lived up to the expectations, had a very Peyton Manning-like rookie year, and I think he's going to continue to do this well throughout the entire year and his career. Now, on the breakout side, I think it's going to be tight end Lance Kendricks, the rookie they drafted this year. And this guy, looking at the preseason, he is an Antonio Gates specimen. This guy looks like a basketball player. He's amazing stature, and I can see him bringing in 50 balls this year. I think he's going to have a big year. But the reason why I like the Rams is not because of their sleeper or their MVP. Well, I mean, it is, but it's because of their amazing depth at wide receiver. I mean, they really couldn't find a single guy last year because they had such a variety of guys, but they have 7 receivers on the roster. They signed Mark Clayton, who's still an okay receiver. They have Brandon Gibson, the third-year guy out of Oregon State, I believe. He had an okay year last year, but this guy still has raw talent, and he was a great player in college. They've released Donnie Avery, I believe, after their injury, so he's off the roster. But they drafted 2 wide receiver, Greg Salas out of Hawaii and Austin Pettis out of BYU. Those 2 guys were phenomenal in college, and as rookies, I see them grow. Plus, they still have the West Welker of the NFC in Damian Amendola, and this guy can just run in the slot all day. He has quick, great hands, and he's going to have a solid year. Now, the question is that many fantasy owners are asking, which of these guys is going to be the Brandon Lloyd of this year? Because Josh McDaniels is now the offensive coordinator in St. Louis since coming over from Denver. So one of those guys is probably going to break out. No one really knows who, but if I was going to pick a guy, I think I'm putting my money on Danny Amendola. I don't love the guy, but if he's in a PPR league, pick him up. Just to stash him on your bench. And plus, Steve Spagnuolo has done a pretty good coaching job since coming over from the Giants. So, there is my NFC West winner. In second place, I think it's going to be the aforementioned Arizona Cardinals, actually. I hated the Cardinals last year without Kurt Warner. I think they were going to have an awful year, and guess what? I was right. So, They did trade for Kevin Cobb in the offseason, and even though they did give up, I think, a way too much in Dominic Rodgers-Cromartie, that, I mean, it was still what they needed for the year. I mean, Dominic Rodgers-Cromartie was a top 11, 12 corner in the league, and they traded for a guy who does have a nice potential as a quarterback. Maybe not the next Aaron Rodgers, but a guy with good talent. But I mean, he still hasn't proved anything really at the NFL level. So how can we say that this guy's going to be more effective than a rookie? They didn't really draft anyone. They still have Max Skelton or John Skelton and Max Hall, the two quarterbacks that got in the draft last year. But Kevin Cobb's the guy, and he's still a good quarterback, I believe, in his fourth year out of Houston. And the Eagles knew what they were doing, drafted him in the second round back in '07, I believe. So Kevin Cobb is the main reason why I really like the Cardinals this year. With John Skelton and Max Hall as the quarterback, Larry Fitzgerald still put in over 90 catches. Imagine what he's going to do with an actual NFL quarterback. Larry Fitzgerald is a monster. We all know this. He's been in multiple Pro Bowls. And he is just going to dominate receivers this year. They are still dominate corners, excuse me. And he's going to play out of his mind. And those two weapons are the main reason why I like the Cardinals to go 8-8 this year. Even though they did lose rookie Ryan Williams, who I was all over out of Virginia Tech, I mean, I still like LaRod Stevens-Helling as a backup, and they signed Chester Taylor, who was just released by the Bears. And I actually wrote a piece about LaRod Stevens-Helling and his impact on the Cardinals on my blog on Tumblr with the same username, Laugh Life Sports. Check me out and follow me and ask me questions. But I really think that LaRod Stevens-Helling could be a good backup if Chester Taylor isn't the backup. Chester Taylor's getting up there in age, but he's still an okay NFL backup. I think that if Beanie Wells was to go down, if it happened, but when, that I think LaRod Stevens-Helling would be the guy to pick up in leagues. But because of that offense, and the defense, alright, they still have Darnell Dockett, and he's just a physical specimen. So, I mean, they're going to have an okay year. I think they're going 8-8, but I don't see them making the playoffs this year. Third in the Nfc West is the Seattle Seahawks. I really don't believe in last year's victory against the Saints. As nice of a story as it was, but I just don't see it happening, you guys. I really don't. They had a nice year, but they lost Matt Hasselbeck, and they replaced him with Tavares Jackson. I mean, I'm one of the people who think, well, what if we haven't really seen Tavares Jackson produce for a long period of time? How maybe he is the next Michael Vick and can do it. I think it's possible because we really haven't seen him get a chance for a long period of time. But I still think he's on a short leash here with Pete Carroll. I really don't think that if he loses the first 5 games, I don't think he's staying the quarterback for them. I think they're going to bring in Charlie Whitehurst. But I mean, maybe we all misjudged him. I don't know. I don't think it's going to happen, but I'm not doubting that it's a possibility. I really like the move they brought in. They brought in Sidney Rice from Minnesota as a receiver. I think that's going to help because Houshmandzadeh was just an awful last year. He was just putrid. And they still have Big Mike Williams, and he had an okay year last year. I love calling him Big Mike Williams. I think that's funny. But I think the breakout this year is going to be Marshawn Lynch. This guy is going to have a full year in that playbook. Pete Carroll really likes him. And I think that this guy is going to run for about 1,200 yards, be an okay late 8th, 9th round flyer in fantasy leagues. And I think the MVP, I think it's really going to have to be Sidney Rice. This guy still is a dominant NFL receiver. He's the main weapon there. I think Tavares knows him well from playing with him in Minnesota. And I think he's going to put up some good yards this year. Oh, and the reason why I think Lynch is a breakout guy is not because he wasn't good before. It's because I think he's going to take the next level up into elite status. Not maybe like a top 15-10 running back. Oh, I forgot to do my players for the Cardinals. Cardinals, I think MVP, it's going to have to be Larry Fitzgerald. the guy's just a monster, as I talked about earlier. And my breakout player, I think I'm putting a sort of it on in a tandem. It's going to be one of those two young receivers they still had. They did lose Steve Breaston in free agency to the Chiefs. But it's going to be Early Doucette or Andre Roberts. These guys are two good young receivers. They have some talent. And one of them, with a good NFL quarterback in Kevin Kolb, is going to stand out beside Larry Fitzgerald. Even though they didn't bring Todd Heap, I don't think he's going to catch Manning off the line. And Beanie Wells was never a really good receiving back in Ohio State, and he hasn't been in the NFL. So I think one of those guys is really going to step up, either Early Doucette or Andre Roberts. Now, finally, in the NFC West, I think it's going to be the 49ers. Oh, guys, by the way, I'm not reading off some magazine. I actually wrote this myself. Yeah, so if this isn't fake, I'm not reading off some magazine. This is all my predictions. I came up with these ideas. So, I was all aboard the 49ers last year. They were my bandwagon team. I thought this team was going to dominate this very weak division. But that did not happen. They were not good last year. Alex Smith has continued to prove everyone wrong on being a first pick in the NFL draft back in 05 or, yeah, I think 05. He just hasn't proved anyone that he can do it. This is his last shot on his rookie contract, and I just don't believe in him doing it at all. Frank Gore's still a monster, but he's under the curse of Savanya Bell. Dun, 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 dun. If you guys don't watch the Fantasy Focus, you're not going to get that reference. But watch the Fantasy Focus. The podcast is on iTunes. It's also on ESPN.com/PodCenter. Matthew Berry, Nate Ravitz, and Pod Vader, a.k.a. Jade Soderberg. They do a great job. Very humorous podcast. Helps me with my fantasy sports and my analysis. But Frank Gore, he's still a good running back in the NFL, but he's still an injury risk. And Michael Crabtree is still an injury risk. I liked him last year, but he's let me down so much last year. He just completely disappointed me. Vernon Davis, Alex Smith loved him, so he'll still be a top 5 tight end. And that defense is just completely led by Patrick Willis. He is a monster. The guy, they could triple team him, double team him. The guy's going to average 10 tackles a game, without a doubt. I mean, since his rookie year, he's averaged 9.5. It's not much of a stretch to say that in his 5th year he's going to average 10. So I think that these guys, just without a quarterback, I think they're going to go 5-11. I think that they might have a shot at the Andrew Luck sweepstakes. I think that if they do poor enough, they could win 2-3 games, have a shot to contend for that. For Andrew Luck, this guy can lead a team, and he could be the missing piece they've been looking for 6 years or so. But the breakout on this team, I think it's probably going to be... God, I'm struggling to think of a guy because this roster is just bad. It's bad. Breakout guy, Braylon Edwards. I mean, the guy with New York Jets had an okay year. I think he pulled in like 600 yards, few touchdowns. But I think this guy can actually have 1,000 yards and 8 touchdowns. Look back to his Cleveland Brown days, and I think he's going to be a good receiver. Most people are getting him in like the 11th round. I think he could be a top 25 receiver, top 20 maybe, if he has a good year. And Alex Smith that's a completely lose all sense of himself. And if Alex Smith gets injured, I can see Troy Smith, the former Heisman winner, actually doing alright. He did pretty good last year. I don't know why they brought Alex Smith back in, but he's an okay NFL quarterback. He's like borderline starter in this league. So, I mean, they should give him a shot if Alex Smith continues to be awful. MVP, it's Frank Gore. There's no other star talent on that team. The guy's averaged like 1,100 yards for every year in his career. It's just a monster in the goal line, and yes, he's going to have some injury risk, but Frank Gore is just an elite back, and there's no comparison to any other player on his team, so he's going to be the MVP. I think the 49ers, San Francisco, is going to have to deal with another year of 5-11, so stick to your Giants, San Francisco. Let's switch